Have you ever found yourself standing at a threshold, looking back at a long road traveled and forward into a future that feels both exciting and a little uncertain? That's often what it feels like when you reach retirement, isn't it? You've spent perhaps 30, 40, even 50 years diligently working, saving, carefully putting money aside into your 401k, your IRA, or other retirement accounts. You watched those balances grow, sometimes slowly, sometimes more quickly, always with the goal of reaching this very moment, the time when you could finally step back from the daily grind and enjoy the fruits of your labor. You built that nest egg, piece by piece, sacrifice by sacrifice. And now, here you are. The question shifts from, how much can I save, to, how do I make this last? It's a profound change in perspective, moving from the accumulation phase to what financial folks call the decumulation phase, but what really feels like the living phase, the time to actually use those savings to support the life you've envisioned. It's perfectly natural if this transition brings a mix of emotions. There's relief, certainly, and pride in what you've accomplished. But alongside that, there can be a layer of anxiety, a quiet worry whispering in the background. How much can I safely take out each year? Will I run out of money? What about taxes? How much will I owe? What if the stock market takes a nosedive right after I retire? How do these required minimum distributions work, and when do they start? These aren't trivial questions. They sit at the very heart of your financial security and peace of mind for the years ahead. You've planned and saved for decades, and the thought of making a misstep now, when you're relying on these funds, can feel incredibly daunting. It's like carefully piloting a ship across a vast ocean, only to face the most challenging navigation right as you approach the harbor. Let's acknowledge that feeling, that weight of responsibility. This isn't just about numbers on a statement. It's about maintaining your independence, affording health care, perhaps helping your children or grandchildren, traveling, pursuing hobbies, or simply knowing you have a cushion for unexpected bumps in the road. It's about ensuring the resources you so carefully gathered can sustain the quality of life you desire and deserve. Think about the journey it took to get here. Remember the choices you made along the way, maybe packing a lunch instead of buying, driving an older car a few extra years, diligently contributing that percentage from every paycheck, even when times were tight. You deferred gratification then for the promise of security now. So, it's completely understandable to feel protective of those savings and perhaps a little hesitant about drawing them down. It can feel counterintuitive, almost like spending your safety net. Many people feel this way. You might talk to friends who are navigating the same waters, sharing concerns over coffee or during a round of golf. One friend might worry about inflation, eroding their purchasing power over time. Another might be concerned about a large, unexpected expense, like a major home repair or a health issue not fully covered by insurance. Someone else might be thinking about leaving a legacy for their loved ones and wondering how withdrawal decisions today impact that future goal. And then there are the rules, the complex web of regulations surrounding different types of accounts. Traditional IRAs and 401ks have tax implications when you withdraw funds, as contributions were often tax-deferred. Roth accounts work differently, usually offering tax-free withdrawals in retirement. And then there are required minimum distributions, or RMDs, mandated by the government starting at a certain age, forcing you to withdraw funds whether you feel you need them or not, which adds another layer of complexity to your planning. It's a lot to keep track of, and the stakes feel very high. The good news is that while the questions are significant, they are not unanswerable. There are strategies, principles, and approaches that can help you navigate this transition with confidence and clarity. Managing your retirement withdrawals isn't about finding a single magic number or a one-size-fits-all solution. Instead, it's about understanding the key factors involved, considering your unique circumstances, and creating a thoughtful, flexible plan that aligns with your goals and provides peace of mind. It's about shifting your mindset from simply preserving the capital to strategically utilizing it to support your life, while managing risks like longevity, market volatility, and taxes. In our time together, we're going to delve into this crucial topic. Think of this as a detailed conversation, exploring the landscape of retirement withdrawals step by step. We won't shy away from the complexities, but we'll break them down into understandable pieces. Our goal is to demystify the process, replacing anxiety with knowledge and confidence. We'll start by looking at the different ways you might approach taking money out, exploring common strategies people use to determine a sustainable withdrawal rate, considering how much you can realistically spend each year without jeopardizing your future. We'll talk about things like the well-known 4% rule, but also discuss its limitations and explore other, perhaps more dynamic, approaches that might suit your situation better. Then, we'll tackle the unavoidable topic of taxes, understanding how withdrawals from different account types, like your traditional 401k or IRA versus a Roth account, are taxed, is absolutely critical. Making tax-smart withdrawal decisions can significantly stretch the longevity of your savings, potentially saving you thousands of dollars over the course of your retirement. We'll explore how your withdrawals interact with Social Security benefits and Medicare premiums, and discuss strategies for managing your tax liability effectively year after year. We will also spend considerable time understanding those required minimum distributions, the RMDs. We'll clarify when they typically start, how they are calculated, at least conceptually, as the exact calculation can be complex, the penalties for failing to take them, and strategies for managing them, perhaps even minimizing their tax impact, or coordinating them with your overall withdrawal plan and charitable giving goals, if that's part of your plan. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we'll emphasize the need for flexibility and ongoing review. Retirement isn't a static state. Life happens. Your spending needs might change, markets fluctuate, tax laws evolve, and your health or family situation could shift. A good withdrawal plan isn't something you set in stone on day one and never revisit. It's a living strategy that needs to adapt along with you. We'll discuss how to build flexibility into your plan and the importance of periodically reviewing and adjusting your approach based on your actual experience and changing circumstances. We'll also touch upon the value of seeking personalized guidance from qualified professionals who can help you tailor a plan specifically for your situation. This journey from saver to spender is significant, but with careful thought and informed decisions, you can navigate it successfully, ensuring your hard-earned savings provide the support and security you need for a fulfilling retirement. Let's begin exploring how. All right, let's roll up our sleeves and get into the practical heart of managing your retirement withdrawals. We acknowledged the anxieties and the importance of this phase in Chapter 1. Now, let's build your confidence by exploring concrete strategies and considerations. Think of this as equipping your navigation toolkit for that harbor approach we talked about. The goal isn't just to reach the shore, but to do so smoothly and safely, with enough provisions for the entire stay. 1. Finding your sustainable withdrawal rhythm, beyond the 4%. Rule: one of the first questions that usually pops up is, how much can I safely take out each year? For decades, the most commonly cited guideline has been the 4% rule. You might have heard of it. Developed by financial planner Bill Bengen back in the 1990s, it suggested that if you withdrew 4% of your portfolio's value in your first year of retirement, and then adjusted that dollar amount for inflation each subsequent year, you had a very high probability of your money lasting for at least 30 years, based on historical market returns and inflation data. For example, if you retired with a $1 million portfolio, you'd withdraw $40,000 in year 1. If inflation was 3% that year, you'd withdraw $41,200 in year 2, regardless of how your portfolio performed. The 4% rule offers a wonderfully simple starting point, a benchmark, to begin the conversation. Its strength lies in its ease of understanding and application. However, it's crucial to recognize its limitations and understand why it might not be the perfect fit for everyone today. First, it was based on historical U.S. market data, primarily from 1926 to the early 1990s. Future returns might look different, and current market conditions, with potentially lower expected returns for bonds and stocks compared to some historical periods, could challenge its assumptions. Second, it assumes a relatively fixed spending pattern, only adjusting for inflation. But real life isn't always like that, is it? Your spending might be higher in the early, more active years of retirement, sometimes called the go-go years, and then perhaps decrease later, the slow-go and no-go years. Or you might face unexpected large expenses. Third, the original rule often focused on a 30-year time frame and didn't always deeply account for investment fees or, significantly, taxes, which can take a real bite out of your withdrawals depending on the account type. So, while the 4% rule provides a valuable reference, think of it less as a rigid rule and more as a helpful guideline to consider within a broader context. Many experts now advocate for more dynamic or flexible withdrawal strategies. One approach involves guardrails. You might start with a target withdrawal rate, say 4% or 5%. If your portfolio does exceptionally well, pushing your withdrawal rate down significantly, e.g. below 3%, you might give yourself a raise or take a bit extra for a special purchase. Conversely, if the market experiences a steep downturn and your withdrawal rate relative to your now smaller portfolio jumps significantly, e.g. above 6%, you might tighten your belt for a year or two, perhaps cutting back on discretionary spending like travel or expensive hobbies until things recover. This approach aims to adapt to real-world market conditions, helping to preserve your capital during tough times while allowing you to enjoy gains during good times. Imagine two neighbors, both retired with similar savings. Martha sticks rigidly to the 4% inflation-adjusted withdrawal. Even after a significant market drop, reduces her portfolio value by 20%. She continues taking out the same inflation-adjusted amount, eating deeper into her principal when the portfolio is down. Her neighbor, David, using a guardrail approach, sees the market drop and decides to forego his planned expensive cruise that year and slightly reduces his overall withdrawal, giving his portfolio more breathing room to potentially recover. Over the long term, David's flexibility might significantly improve his chances of not outliving his savings. Ultimately, your personal sustainable withdrawal rate depends on many factors. Your age and expected longevity. The longer you anticipate living, the more conservative you might need to be. Your portfolio's size and how it's invested. A portfolio heavily weighted towards volatile stocks might warrant a lower initial withdrawal rate than a more balanced one. Your essential versus discretionary spending needs. And crucially, your other sources of income like Social Security, pensions, or part-time work. It requires a thoughtful assessment of your unique situation, perhaps starting with the 4% guideline, but adjusting based on these personal factors and a willingness to be flexible. 2. Weaving through the tax maze. Smart withdrawal sequencing. Now, let's talk taxes. Nobody's favorite topic, but absolutely essential when managing retirement funds. Failing to plan for taxes is like planning a road trip without looking at a map. You might get there, but you'll likely take unnecessary detours and pay more tolls than needed. The key thing to remember is that different types of retirement accounts have different tax treatments upon withdrawal. Traditional 401ks and traditional IRAs. Contributions were typically made pre-tax. You got a tax deduction back then, and the investments grew tax-deferred. The flip side is that withdrawals in retirement are generally taxed as ordinary income at your prevailing tax rate. Roth 401ks and Roth IRAs. Contributions were made with money you'd already paid taxes on, after tax. The magic here is that qualified withdrawals in retirement, including all your contributions and all the investment earnings, are completely tax-free. Taxable brokerage accounts. These are non-retirement accounts where you invested after-tax money. When you sell investments held for more than a year, any profit, capital gain, is typically taxed at lower long-term capital gains rates, which are often more favorable than ordinary income tax rates. Understanding these differences allows for strategic withdrawal sequencing, deciding which accounts to tap first to potentially minimize your overall tax burden over your retirement lifetime. A common guideline suggests the following order. Tap taxable accounts. First, since gains are often taxed at lower capital gains rates and you only pay tax on the appreciation, not the whole amount, drawing from these accounts first can be advantageous. It also allows your tax-deferred and tax-free accounts to continue growing longer. Then, tap tax-deferred accounts, traditional IRAs, 401ks. Once taxable accounts are depleted, or if you need more income, you start withdrawing from these. Remember, these withdrawals are taxed as ordinary income. You'll want to manage these withdrawals carefully to avoid jumping into a higher tax bracket if possible. This is also where required minimum distributions, RMDs, will eventually force withdrawals, which we'll discuss next. Save tax-free accounts, Roth IRAs, 401ks for last, or strategically, because Roth withdrawals are tax-free, they provide incredible flexibility. You can use them to manage your taxable income in certain years, perhaps taking a larger Roth withdrawal if you have a particularly high expense and want to avoid pushing yourself into a higher tax bracket with a traditional IRA withdrawal. They are also excellent assets to leave to heirs, as beneficiaries generally don't pay income tax on inherited Roth accounts either. Think about it like having different jars of money. One jar, taxable, has a small toll when you take money out. Another jar, traditional, has a regular toll based on how much you take. The third jar, Roth, has no toll at all. It makes sense to use the no-toll or small toll jars strategically, saving the regular toll jar for when needed or required. Furthermore, your withdrawals from traditional accounts can impact other areas. They contribute to your provisional income, which determines if and how much of your Social Security benefits are taxed. Large traditional withdrawals can also potentially increase your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums through something called the Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, IRMAA. Imagine Sarah, who needed a new roof and took a large lump sum from her traditional IRA. Not only did that withdrawal push her into a higher income tax bracket for the year, but it also unexpectedly increased her Medicare premiums for the following year because her income temporarily spiked. Had she planned differently, perhaps using a combination of taxable funds and Roth funds, if available, or spreading the traditional withdrawal over 2 tax years, she might have avoided that double hit. This highlights the importance of looking at the big picture and considering these interconnected effects. Some people even consider doing Roth conversions, moving money from a traditional account to a Roth account and paying the taxes now, either before retirement or in early retirement years when their income might be lower, to build up a larger pool of tax-free funds for later use. 3. Understanding and managing required minimum distributions, RMDs. Whether you need the money or not, the government eventually requires you to start taking withdrawals from most retirement accounts, except Roth IRAs. These are called required minimum distributions, or RMDs. The rationale is simple. The government allowed you to defer taxes on that money for decades, and now it wants to collect the tax revenue. The starting age for RMDs has changed recently due to the Secure Acts. For individuals born between 1951 and 1959, RMDs generally begin at age 73. For those born in 1960 or later, the starting age is pushed further to 75. It's always good to verify the current rules as they can change. Your first RMD must generally be taken by April 1st of the year, following the year you reach your RMD starting age. Subsequent RMDs must be taken by December 31st each year. How much do you have to take? The calculation is based on your account balance at the end of the previous year and a life expectancy factor provided by the IRS in specific tables, most commonly the Uniform Lifetime Table. For example, if your traditional IRA balance was $500,000 at the end of last year, and the IRS factor for your age this year is, say, 25, you would divide $500,000 by 25 to find your RMD for the year, which would be $20,000. This $20,000 withdrawal would then be added to your taxable income for the year. Failing to take the correct RMD amount on time carries a stiff penalty. Currently, 25% of the amount you failed to withdraw, though it can potentially be reduced to 10% if you correct the mistake promptly. This is a penalty you definitely want to avoid. So, how do you manage RMDs effectively? Plan ahead. Know when your RMDs start and get an estimate of the amount. Your account custodian, the brokerage firm holding your IRA, for instance, often calculates it for you, but it's your responsibility to ensure it's taken. Coordinate with your needs. If your RMD amount is more than you need for living expenses, you don't have to spend it. You can simply withdraw the required amount, pay the taxes due, and reinvest the remainder in a taxable brokerage account. Consider qualified charitable distributions, QCDs. If you are charitably inclined and are age 70.5 or older, you can make donations directly from your IRA to a qualified charity, up to $100,000 per year, indexed for inflation starting in 2024. This QCD amount counts towards satisfying your RMD for the year, but the distributed amount is excluded from your taxable income. This can be a very powerful tax planning tool, allowing you to support causes you care about while potentially lowering your tax bill and avoiding impacts on Social Security taxation or Medicare premiums. Imagine George, who normally donates $5,000 a year to his church. Instead of taking his $25,000 RMD, paying tax on it, and then donating $5,000 from his checking account, he directs $5,000 from his IRA straight to the church as a QCD. He only needs to withdraw and pay taxes on the remaining $20,000 of his RMD. The $5,000 QCD satisfies part of his RMD requirement and isn't counted as income. Timing. You can take your RMD as a lump sum anytime during the year, or you might arrange for periodic withdrawals, monthly or quarterly, to smooth out the income flow. RMDs are a fact of retirement life for most account types, but understanding them and planning for them turns them from a potential source of stress into just another manageable part of your financial landscape. 4. Keeping your investments aligned. Portfolio management doesn't stop. You might think that once you retire, you can just set your investments on autopilot or shift everything into ultra-safe options like cash or CDs. While safety is paramount, completely abandoning growth potential can be risky in its own right due to inflation. Retirement can last 20, 30, or even more years, and you need your savings to keep pace with the rising cost of living. Managing your portfolio remains crucial throughout retirement. The big challenge shifts from pure growth maximization to balancing income generation, capital preservation, and inflation protection. A key risk unique to retirement is sequence of return risk. This means suffering poor investment returns in the early years of retirement, especially while you are simultaneously withdrawing funds, can have a devastating and disproportionately negative impact on how long your money lasts compared to suffering those same poor returns later in retirement. Think of it like climbing down a mountain versus climbing up. If you stumble early on the descent, poor returns early in retirement while withdrawing, you have much less altitude, capital left, making the rest of the journey down much more perilous. If you stumble near the bottom, poor returns later in retirement, it's less consequential. How do you manage this? Maintain a balanced allocation. Don't become overly conservative too quickly. While you'll likely reduce your stock market exposure compared to your working years, maintaining a diversified mix of stocks for growth potential to combat inflation and bonds, cash for stability and income is usually advisable. The right mix depends on your risk tolerance, time horizon, and withdrawal needs. Consider a bucket strategy. This approach mentally divides your portfolio into different buckets based on when you'll need the money. Bucket 1, short term, holds 1 to 3 years' worth of anticipated living expenses in very safe, easily accessible assets like cash, money market funds, or short-term CDs. This is the money you'll draw from first, insulating you from having to sell stocks during a market downturn. Bucket 2, mid-term, holds funds needed in roughly 3 to 7 years, invested in slightly higher yielding but still relatively stable assets, like short to intermediate term bonds. As Bucket 1 is depleted, you refill it from Bucket 2, ideally selling assets when their value is stable or has grown. Bucket 3, long-term, holds the remainder of your portfolio focused on long-term growth through diversified stocks and potentially longer-term bonds. This bucket is designed to outpace inflation over time and replenish the other buckets. Periodically, gains from Bucket 3 are harvested, ideally during good market conditions, to refill Bucket 2. This isn't a rigid system, but a conceptual framework to help manage sequence risk and provide psychological comfort, knowing your near-term needs are covered by safe assets. Rebalance periodically. Just like during your working years, your investment mix will drift over time as different assets perform differently. Periodically, perhaps annually, rebalancing back to your target allocation helps manage risk and potentially enhances returns. 5. The power of flexibility, adapting to life's curveballs. If there's one certainty in retirement, it's that things will change. Markets go up and down, inflation waxes and wanes, your health might shift, family needs could arise, or your own desires and goals might evolve. That's why perhaps the most critical element of a successful withdrawal strategy is flexibility. A rigid plan set in stone on day one is unlikely to serve you well throughout your entire retirement journey. Building in adaptability is key. Know your spending. Have a clear understanding of your essential expenses, housing, food, healthcare, utilities, taxes, versus your discretionary expenses, travel, hobbies, entertainment, gifts. Knowing this difference gives you immediate levers to pull if needed. Adjust for market conditions. As we discussed with dynamic withdrawal strategies, be prepared to potentially trim discretionary spending during significant market downturns. Delaying a major vacation or a home renovation for a year might feel like a sacrifice, but it can make a huge difference in preserving your capital when your portfolio value is depressed. Conversely, strong market returns might allow for occasional splurges or increased giving. Conduct regular reviews. At least once a year, sit down, perhaps with a trusted advisor, and review your situation. How did your spending align with your plan? How did your portfolio perform? Have any tax laws changed? Have your personal circumstances or goals shifted? This annual check-in allows you to make necessary course corrections proactively, rather than waiting for a problem to arise. Perhaps your initial withdrawal rate feels too restrictive, or maybe too aggressive, given recent market volatility. Adjustments are normal and healthy. Maintain a contingency fund. Beyond your regular investment buckets, having access to an emergency fund, outside of your core retirement accounts if possible, perhaps in a high-yield savings account, for truly unexpected large expenses, can prevent you from having to sell investments at an inopportune time or take a larger-than-planned withdrawal from your retirement accounts. Managing your retirement withdrawals is an ongoing process, not a one-time event. It requires combining sound strategies around withdrawal rates, taxes, RMDs, and investments, with the crucial ingredient of flexibility and a commitment to periodic review and adjustment. By embracing these concepts, you move from simply hoping your money will last to actively managing your resources to support the retirement you've worked so hard to achieve. So, we've journeyed together through the landscape of retirement withdrawals, exploring the paths and potential pitfalls involved in turning your hard-earned savings into the steady income stream you need from this next chapter of life. We started by acknowledging that natural feeling of uncertainty, that shift in perspective from diligently building your nest egg to carefully drawing upon it. It's a significant transition, carrying both the weight of responsibility and the promise of freedom. Now, as we draw our conversation to a close, let's weave together the key threads we've discussed and reflect on what it all means for your peace of mind and your future. We spent considerable time delving into the practical strategies, the how-to of managing your withdrawals. Remember our discussion about finding a sustainable withdrawal rate? We talked about the familiar 4% rule as a starting point, a helpful benchmark born from historical analysis. But we also emphasized its limitations in today's world and for individual circumstances. The key takeaway wasn't a single magic number, but rather the concept of finding a rhythm that works for you. This means considering more dynamic approaches, perhaps using guardrails that allow you to adjust your withdrawals based on market performance, taking a little less in leaner years to protect your capital, and perhaps enjoying a bit more when your investments have thrived. It's about creating a plan that reflects your anticipated lifespan, your comfort level with investment risk, your essential versus discretionary spending needs, and your other income sources like Social Security. It's about moving from a rigid rule to a responsive strategy. Then, we navigated the often complex world of taxes. This is an area where thoughtful planning can make a truly significant difference to how long your money lasts. We reinforced the crucial understanding that different account types, your traditional tax-deferred accounts like 401ks and IRAs, your tax-free Roth accounts, and your taxable brokerage accounts, all have distinct tax consequences upon withdrawal. The general principle we explored was a sequence, often starting with taxable accounts to take advantage of potentially lower capital gains rates, then moving to tax-deferred accounts while managing the ordinary income tax impact, and strategically preserving those wonderful tax-free Roth accounts for later use, for managing your tax bracket in specific years, or potentially for heirs. We touched upon how withdrawals, particularly from traditional accounts, aren't just about income tax. They can ripple outwards, affecting the taxation of your Social Security benefits and potentially increasing your Medicare premiums via IRA adjustments. Being aware of these connections allows you to make more informed, tax-efficient decisions, potentially stretching every dollar further. And we highlighted the power of qualified charitable distributions, QCDs, for those 70 and a half and older, offering a way to fulfill your RMD obligations and support causes you cherish, all while reducing your taxable income. Tax planning in retirement isn't about avoiding taxes altogether, but about managing them intelligently so they don't take an unnecessary bite out of your resources. Required minimum distributions, or RMDs, were another key landmark on our map. We demystified these mandated withdrawals, clarifying that they generally begin at age 73 or 75, depending on your birth year, for most retirement accounts except Roth IRAs. We stressed the importance of understanding the calculation based on year-end account balance and an IRS life expectancy factor, and, critically, the need to take the correct amount on time to avoid substantial penalties. But we also framed RMDs not as a burden, but as a predictable element to incorporate into your plan. If the RMD is more than you need, the excess can simply be reinvested in a taxable account. And as mentioned, QCDs offer a valuable strategy for satisfying your RMD while achieving charitable goals tax efficiently. Understanding RMDs transforms them from a source of anxiety into a manageable, plannable event. We also reaffirmed that managing your investments doesn't stop when you stop working. Retirement might last for decades, and protecting your purchasing power against the slow, steady erosion of inflation requires maintaining some growth potential in your portfolio. We talked about the unique challenge of sequence of return risk, the danger of poor market returns early in retirement when you're also taking withdrawals, and how strategies like maintaining a balanced allocation, not getting too conservative, and perhaps using a bucket approach can help mitigate this risk. Dividing your assets into short-term, mid-term, and long-term buckets can provide both a practical framework for managing withdrawals and significant psychological comfort, ensuring your immediate needs are covered by safe funds while the rest works towards long-term growth. Regular rebalancing remains just as important now as it ever was, and weaving through all these strategies was the golden thread of flexibility. If there's one piece of advice to hold on to above all others, it's the need to build adaptability into your plan. Life is rarely linear. Market conditions fluctuate, unforeseen expenses arise, health needs change, family situations evolve, and even your own desires might shift. A rigid plan is a brittle plan. True resilience comes from having a clear understanding of your essential versus discretionary spending, allowing you to make adjustments when necessary. It comes from being willing to adapt your withdrawal strategy in response to significant market shifts, tightening the belt during downturns to preserve capital. It absolutely requires conducting regular reviews, at least annually, to assess your progress, check if your assumptions still hold true, and make necessary course corrections. Think of your retirement plan not as a concrete sculpture, but as a living garden that needs tending, pruning, and occasional adjustments to thrive. Now, let's step back from the specific tactics and consider the broader perspective. Managing retirement withdrawals is, in many ways, about navigating a significant psychological shift. For decades, your financial mindset was likely focused on accumulation, saving, investing, growing that nest egg. The discipline was in not spending, in deferring gratification. Now, the task is to consciously, thoughtfully, and strategically spend those resources you worked so hard to gather. This can feel counterintuitive, even uncomfortable at first. It might feel like you're depleting your safety net. But it's crucial to reframe this. You saved this money for this exact purpose: to support yourself, to enable the life you envisioned, to provide security and freedom in your retirement years. Thoughtful spending in retirement isn't reckless. It's the fulfillment of a long-term plan. It's about using the tools you built to construct the life you desire. This long-term view is essential. We're not just planning for next year, we're planning for potentially the next 10, 20, 30, or even more years. The strategies we've discussed, sustainable withdrawal rates, tax efficiency, managing investments, staying flexible, are all aimed at achieving that long-term security. They are designed to increase the probability that your resources will last as long as you do, allowing you to face the future with confidence rather than apprehension. It's about converting financial assets into reliable cash flow that supports your well-being year after year. And while the financial mechanics are critically important, let's never forget that money is ultimately a means to an end, not the end itself. Your retirement isn't defined solely by the balance in your accounts. It's defined by the richness of your experiences, the strength of your relationships, your health, your sense of purpose, and the time you now have to pursue what truly matters to you. Sound financial planning, including a well-managed withdrawal strategy, is the foundation that helps make those things possible. It provides the stability and peace of mind that frees you up to actually live your retirement rather than constantly worrying about finances. So, I want to leave you with a strong sense of empowerment. Yes, the rules around retirement accounts, taxes, and investments can seem complex, but as we've explored, they can be broken down into understandable concepts. Knowledge truly is power here. By understanding the principles we've discussed, you are far better equipped to make informed decisions, to ask the right questions, and to take control of your financial future. You are not simply adrift on the currents of the market or tax law. You have navigational tools and strategies at your disposal. Please embrace the possibilities that this phase of life holds. You've worked incredibly hard, made sacrifices, and planned diligently to reach this point. Now is the time to reap the rewards, thoughtfully and sustainably. Focus on the proactive steps you can take, understanding your spending, exploring withdrawal strategies, considering tax implications, reviewing your plan regularly. These actions reduce uncertainty and build confidence. Don't hesitate to seek personalized guidance if you feel you need it. A qualified financial advisor or tax professional who understands retirement planning can be an invaluable partner, helping you tailor these general principles to your unique circumstances and providing an objective perspective. Think of it not as an admission of not knowing, but as a wise step towards securing your future, like consulting a specialist for an important health matter. Ultimately, managing your retirement withdrawals is about stewardship, carefully tending to the resources you've cultivated so they can nourish you throughout your retirement journey. It's about finding that balance between enjoying the present and ensuring future security. It's about navigating the financial complexities with wisdom and foresight, so you can embrace the opportunities and joys of retirement with greater peace of mind. You have navigated a long and successful journey to reach this point. With thoughtful planning and a willingness to adapt, you can navigate the path ahead with confidence, ensuring your financial resources support a rich, fulfilling, and secure retirement. May your years ahead be filled with purpose, joy, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are well prepared.